So it's working! The auto djent machine is alive. Guitarists are gonna hate me for this one. Woo! This is a virtual guitar controlled entirely by the drums. So we've got triggers on the kick, on the snare, on the hi-hat. All of that comes into the SPD-SX, which runs into my computer. I've been a fan for a long time of using drum triggers, not only for triggering drum sounds, but also... But there is so much more that we can do. And I can think of no better use of this technology than to put my guitarist friends out of work. So for the last couple of weeks, I've been testing out this setup with my band, SUNGAZER.
We had an amazing guest guitarist play on this next one. Sean is going to be playing his part on the drums, thus rendering the instrument of guitar completely useless. We did it, guys! We did it!
How to make auto djent, part 1. Djent is a style of metal music which sounds like this. Djent, 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 djent. And one of the characteristics of djent is that the guitar and drums are often locked together in unison rhythms. It's a perfect opportunity for drum trigger shenanigans. With that in mind, let's get djenty. Now, there's a long-standing tradition of creating automatic djent. You might have seen Rob Scallon and Andrew Wong's recent video using modular synthesis. You might have even seen my own first attempt at this back in 2013 with the band Inside Outside. If you were one of the lucky 6 people in the audience. I think perhaps the best example of this is Naveen Koperweis's one-man metal band. This is far and above the most technologically advanced version of this that I'm aware of, but that wasn't going to stop us from creating our own djent machine. You see, one of the songs on our latest album featured a guest performance from an amazing guitarist named Josh de la Victoria. This is a style of guitar playing known as thumping, and damn does it sound good. And so when it came time to do the live shows, we were left wondering how exactly we would do that. Now, obviously, our first choice would be to play live with Josh, but in the event we have to perform without guitar, how might we pull this off? I think it's gonna be heavy.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
First time. That's so stupid. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm out of a job.
Sorry, man. Now, there's a couple ways to set this up. There's an easy way and a hard way. The easiest way by far is just to use audio samples. You just take a guitar recording, ideally individual notes, you stick those notes on the drums, and every time you hit that drum, you get that note. And you're done. Okay, but don't you want to hear about the hard way? Because it's way cooler, and I promise it's going to be awesome, and I spent a lot of time on it.
Sure, fine, whatever.
Thanks. Method 2, MIDI. You see, working with audio has its limitations. It's good enough for a demo, but you don't have much control over things like note length, articulation, pitch, tone. It's very tricky to modify this stuff after the fact. Now, we can improve on this slightly by using the actual guitar tracks from the album. So if we chop that up into individual notes, play that on the drums. It's a little better, but it's not quite there. We still don't have control over all those parameters I mentioned before, and so this leaves us with no other choice than to use MIDI. Ultimately, we settled on using a virtual instrument. So this is the Submission Audio Grove bass. So this is the signature Simon Grove sample library instrument thing. You may know Simon as the bass player for Pliny. He also mixed our album. When I play, you can actually see the notes on the guitar here. And by using an external controller, you can play this like any other MIDI instrument. Now, to play play this using a keyboard is one thing, but to play it with the drums is a bit more involved.
Machines, computers. This is the world of the future. Tomorrow's artists must learn to live with this technology. Take Johnny here, for example. We can imagine a world in which he could play guitar on the drums. Today, he'll be learning how.
All right, you ready, Johnny? First, create a new MIDI track containing the Grove bass instrument. Then, start playing. What's the matter, Johnny? You not hearing anything? Nothing coming through. Well, that's because your triggers are sending extremely short notes. Let's just lengthen those out around 180 milliseconds, and there's the signal. But the triggers are still playing the wrong notes, Johnny. Each drum sends a specific MIDI note, which can be determined in your drum module. In this case, the kick is sending on C-1. Oh, that's way too low. Let's bump that up a couple of octaves. That's much better, isn't it, Johnny? And you'll probably want separate control over each trigger. So we'll want to isolate the kick drum by setting the lowest pitch to C-1. That's the note that we're receiving from our drum trigger. And we'll set the range to 0 so that it rejects all other notes. Now we've got a sort of pitch filter, which will only listen to the kick and reject all other incoming notes. Next, we'll need to group this into a MIDI effect rack, duplicate the chain for snare and hi-hat, and set those devices to only listen to hi-hat and snare triggers, respectively. Congratulations, Johnny, you now have separate control over all 3 triggers. Adjust the transposition according to taste, keeping in mind that the lower the note, the gentler. Good choice, Johnny, that low B always hits hard. Now set the hi-hat to the same note and the snare to 1 octave above. That's starting to sound like metal. Next, let's set the articulation. You don't want to listen to these boring finger strokes, do you, Johnny? That's right. This needs to slap. Literally. In Grove bass, you can access additional articulations by playing a second note, which corresponds to the articulation. Using Ableton's chord device, we can duplicate this signal to generate an additional note to make it slap. Repeat for snare and set hi-hat to a muted ghost note. Now, we are getting pretty close, aren't we, Johnny? You must be tired from all this work. Now, I couldn't help but notice that this hi-hat sounds a bit unnatural. After all, a real guitar player would be slapping, popping, pulling. We're gonna have to simulate that here. Let's go to the hi-hat channel. We'll insert a random note generator, increase probability to 100%, set choices to 3, and set the mode to alternate. Finally, we'll add a scale effect to force the notes to trigger the appropriate keys. Now, when we play the hi-hat, it will cycle automatically through these 3 articulations. Well, that's sure neat, isn't it, Johnny? Now, if you want to get saucy, you can also feed the ghost notes from the snare into this same channel. That means we'll have to go to our snare channel, create a velocity gate and 2 separate channels, one that will only listen to quiet notes and one that will only listen to loud notes. Make sure you set the mode to gate. We'll send the loud notes to the accent channel, that's the slap, and we'll send the quiet notes into the hi-hat channel. Now we have 3 separate, independently modifiable MIDI sources. That's just swell, isn't it? Finally, we'll want a way to control the pitch of this instrument, so we'll map the transposition of all 3 triggers to one single knob in Ableton. Now you can program the chord changes of your song and play along with the peace of mind knowing that you will always be in key. This will transform your device from a mere Instagram gimmick into a useful musical instrument.
And that's how you create an automatic djent machine.
So we spent the last couple of weeks on tour trying to figure out if this could actually work in the real world.
It's like funk metal guitar.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing for that? Are you triggering one drum but having it alternate if it's going to do the high octave or the low octave? Or
Well, you all know the answer to that by now.
So it's the low octave on the kick, it's the high octave on the snare, then it's the ghost notes, and also the hi-hat.
So you have like a threshold on that trigger or something?
Exactly.
Oh, neat. Sick, I love it.
Sean, of course, is playing with the triggers, putting me out of business. Shout out to Simon Grove for Grove Bass Submission Audio, putting bass players out of business everywhere, including in my own band.
And that's how you make auto djent.
Automatic djent.